what you do, Navajo protection dolls, or all that. Because I'm going to where you exist. I'm turning my attention, my unconscious attention, to the pattern of information about you. Think of it as a book somewhere. It has nothing to do with your physical presence. I'm going to your pattern of information. So you can't stop me from doing that, nor could I stop you from remote viewing me. So we're not going anywhere. If, in instances, there are two instances to follow up on your question here that I can address. If I were to remote view, let's say, a place in the solar system, let's say a particular comet or an asteroid or a planet where nothing is going on, and I put myself there in the present. I temporarily qualify the time as now, and I could describe the surface of Mercury or one of the moons of Jupiter or something like that. But because there's no humans, there's no conscious awareness there except for perhaps the planet itself. The idea of Gaia is real. Planets are conscious. Suns are conscious too. We've discovered, but I don't talk about that publicly because it's hard enough to get people to swallow the idea of the public, not the military, of the efficacy and effectiveness of remote viewing. So we limit the discussion to science as much as we can. But if there's nothing going on, back to my example, a hypothetical example, on the planet Pluto, mind can detect the idea that another person or another consciousness had looked at that area before. And then you can follow that consciousness back to its source. So that's one example as a remote viewer and real-world cases. The other example is after I mounted an operation at one point during the Soviet spy years to find the erstwhile Soviet Union's, the Russians' extrasense program. We knew they had a psychic team. They call them extrasensors. And I found them, and they did not use remote viewing modalities. They never discovered how to train this. So they used highly gifted psychics and trained them against military targets, U.S. military targets. When we turned our attention as a U.S. team against the Soviet Defense Council meetings to go for the jugular, what are they planning? What's their intent? They would station one of these extrasense folks, one of these team members, in the meeting, right there at the meeting. And a very, very gifted psychic can tell if you are pinging them. They can tell if you're pinging them, whether it's remote viewing or telepathically. So those are the two instances where where that in my experience, where psychically we can pick up on somebody else.
Thank you. Okay.
And I write about this in my book, in one of the chapters in my book.
Thank you.
The next question is from Plain.
Ed, do you feel that there's such a thing as a bubble or whatever, a false, trail around events that can create a false reality for remote viewing results? Let me give an example. It's said, and I don't know if this is true, but it's said that incorrect coordinates were used in the military unit for a Swiss mountain, or maybe it was a German mountain, as opposed to the mountain village nearby. And then once the answer had been corrected, new viewers still got the old result. And so I guess the bigger question is, if a bunch of people are putting psychic energy or remote viewing something like the JFK assassination, can that cause new, call it grooves in the matrix, that mean it would be difficult to know if you're getting the real results?
No, I mean, those are apples and oranges as far as we're concerned in the professional field. The only time I have run into, by the way, your example of the bad coordinates, that was in the past in the military unit. Remote viewing has evolved to an extreme degree over the last quarter century that I've been practicing and teaching it. It's during the early days we made lots of mistakes because this was a new tool. We had to fall on our face, pick ourselves back up, dust ourselves off, and go back to the drawing board again and again and again, because this was a brand new technology. And we were in the learning phase, and when we made mistakes sometimes, like the one you mentioned, which is real, we didn't know we made a mistake until later, until we realized that we got the feedback from from the real world and then we had to go back and analyze the result of that error, take a look at it and try to correct it. So it's come a long way. When we think of a bubble, or to use an allegory, that's as close to what you seem to be talking about as I can fathom. It's like this. We know of a couple of cases where we were blocked from seeing technologies on other planets, for instance, other civilizations. So we were blocked from looking at it. We knew that we were blocked. We knew that we no matter what we did, it was a trap door. If we tried to hit this target, we ended up somewhere else in the global mind. That's one instance. And the other instance is, and it's real, angels can block us. If an angel can block other angels or our own, I don't know, but we know they're angels based upon many years of taking a look at what the church fathers described as angels, even in the Arabic world. They can block us from looking at certain things, and they have. They can, especially when it comes to hurting someone else. If you want to use a remote viewing information to negatively affect another person, in many of those cases, we're blocked. So it's not our ethics at play here. It's another ethic.
Okay, one more question. What would you say are the biggest couple of things that have happened in the RV world over the last 5 years or so?
The biggest one, beyond a doubt, is the geofix. Geofix. When I use geofix in my work now, it's extremely precise. In the beginning of coordinate remote viewing, 25 years ago plus, we were given a Cartesian coordinate if we were interested in a geographical location there. Otherwise, we weren't. We were given a geographical coordinate, and our viewer, when they turned their attention to that latitude and longitude, was spot on every time. There was never any problem. Unconscious would go precisely to that point. But we could not do the obverse in land navigation. It's called resection. We couldn't, if we were dropped somewhere describing a target, let's say a hostage somewhere, we have no problem locking on to Terry Wade, Terry Anderson, whoever the hostage, Colonel Higgins, happened to be at the time, and we can still do this very easily. But we could not tell you where obversely where that person was. We had to do a lot of work to describe the surroundings and match them up to knowns, et cetera, and by the time we did that, the target was generally moved. When we were trying to kill Muammar Gaddafi during the Libyan war, by the time my unit had analyzed all the information about where he was so we could direct blue light, that was the name of Delta Force before they became Delta, onto the target, he was moved. But now that's changed. And I was very interested in this because one of my hobbies has been missing exploited children. I've always wanted, my dream was during an Amber Alert to be able to identify the location of the child within 4 hours' time, because 4 hours is the average between where a child, particularly girls, are raped and murdered, always using a vehicle. So my dream has been to be able to locate them within that 4 hour average time to fatality, and now we can do that. It's an extremely important discovery in remote viewing. The way we can do that, and I'll be showing the public examples of that in the forthcoming year.
And I would add that maybe one of the biggest changes in the last few years is more and more remote viewers are coming around to the dim perspective on the next 5 years.
Yeah, it's a difficult thing to do, though. There's levels of skill out there, and you have to really be on your toes and have a lot of experience to be able to discriminate whether or not what you're viewing is real, or just how much analytical overlay your imagination got involved in the process. And then, even if your skills are very good, you can try analytically to drive a square peg into a round hole. We have an in-house word for this, these kinds of things, where the analyst will have a mindset that's not flexible. They'll want to force the information into that particular mindset, their own meme or their own paradigm. And that can be just as bad as ruining a remote viewing session because of lack of skills. So we have to be careful. Yeah,
Okay,
we're very interested in looking ahead. And right now, most of my energies are spent not on looking ahead, but on prophylaxis and being proactive to prevent my own demise and my family's from what we know is right around the corner and happening now, or happening now.
Well, you're not the only one with that view and that, trying to do the same thing. Thanks, Ed.
Pleasure.
Thanks. Ed, just following up from what you said, I remember in a Coast to Coast interview with George Norrie, you mentioned that you had remote viewed the devil, Satan, and that you saw him, that you thought that he had recognized you. Was this similar to what you just discussed earlier with Plain, in the sense that the Satan was redirecting you to a different target, or was it something else that you found in the interpretation that you knew that he was sensing you?
There are a few cases in my history where entities, not necessarily people, can sense that you're there and looking at them, and they react to that too. There's one other instance also too. It's an odd thing. If a person is sleeping and you're remote viewing them at the time when they're sleeping, whether it's past or present, they can sometimes detect you in their dreams, because we have access to unconscious only during periods of sleep or during moments of revelation, or using the methods that we use, the remote viewing methods that we have. Otherwise, unconscious doesn't play a part in our day-to-day lives. But when you sleep, you're there, you're immersed in that field. And there, if somebody is remote viewing you, you can detect it sometimes. And you can you can actually enter their dreams, and that's a real effect. Especially if you have a team of remote viewers that are doing the same thing at the same time to a person sleeping. So as long as, again, the intent is not negative, then that person who is dreaming now has you in their dream. So that we don't avail ourselves of that, because it's not very practical or utilitarian. What else? What was the second part of your question? Again?
It was regarding Satan, in regards to
yes.
how did you sense him? Was it through the analysis part that you noticed?
No, it was not, because even we bilocate when we don't cross the line. The ideal in terms of a remote viewing is that half of your conscious awareness is connected to the pattern of information that defines the target, and the other half, you have to be conscious enough to keep the music playing, to keep that session information download flowing, right? So we don't want to cross that line. If we cross the line, the flow of information stops for technical reasons. It just stops, and I don't want to get into the technical reasons at this juncture. What I wanted to see if the idea of evil really existed, because the Columbine massacre in Colorado, it was the first example in history that I know of children killing children. There was no precedent for this in history, and I began to think, why? What is this? And I thought maybe this concept of evil and good really is real. Okay. I want to see what that looks like in the Matrix. So I chose as an example of what most of us would regard as a connector, having some connectivity to the idea of evil, as Satan. And that's why I wanted to see if it was real. What kind of information in terms of